Hello? Laurel?
Hi.
Are you there?
Hi. I'm here. How are you?
I'm fine. I would just like to say thanks for allowing me to interview you and to try to get out your story to the world. So basically we're just going to start with some questions I wrote down and take as long as you want to answer them and be as thorough as you want. And I'm just going to listen, okay?
Okay.
So first of all...
And I would like to say thank you. I think it actually took a great deal of courage, and this is a very compassionate thing to do. I have been interviewed in the past, and I've been contacted by a number of pretty prominent journalists, and every one of them was threatened and scared into silence and dropping the idea. So I know that you know this, and I'd like to thank you for your efforts.
Oh, thank you. I would just like to say for the record, for all the people that have followed my YouTube channel, to the Romanian Secret Police Ducat and the Romanian Secret Service and the French Foreign Legionnaires and the many rogue agents that have helped me through my life and that I've talked about in my other videos, this person that I'm about to interview is the only person that I've talked to that actually understands the stuff that has actually taken place in my life and actually knows a bit more about it than me, and I'm really excited about this interview. So first of all, I would like everyone to know we've been talking a lot, and she has a current situation going on even in her home right now, and I would like to start the interview out by Laurel, just tell me about what's going on in your flat and the incident with your stomach, and basically how the government has been completely surrounding you by Freemasons and handlers and putting people in your life to specifically try to control you and to do only God knows what.
Absolutely. Well, to explain my current situation is very complicated. I was working at Lenox Hills Physical Therapy at 214 East 82nd Street in New York. It is a complete front for human slavery via brainwashing and mind control. They are all high-level Freemasons involved in human trafficking and satanic ritual abuse slave handling. The therapists there are all highly trained, operative, fronting as mild-mannered therapists and healers, when in fact they're involved in human slave trade and working for the CIA. I faced a great deal of abuse there. They were paying me cash off the book, Eugene Sazonov and Elena Waxman, to keep me coming in for abuse and programming and containment. It escalated to sexual abuse, which I fought, and when I fought the abuse, be it mental or sexual, or they would begin to take me down to no money. So I would come in, and all of the other therapists who are involved in slave handling would be book solid, 5, 6, 7, patients, and I would have 0 or 1 patient on the book. So that was their way of telling me, you fight this, and you're going to have no money to live on. It reached the point where I just couldn't take it anymore, and I stood up for myself in a very strong way, and I went public with it, and they just fired me. So that left me in a very bad situation where I'm now trying to find work. I am a political prisoner of America, so I can't leave the country, and I can't work legally, which is a hellacious punishment in its own. While I was working at Lenox Hills Physical Therapy, I found a few apartments who tried to verify my employment by calling my work, and a satanic ritual abuse slave handler, Marjorie Teplet, who was probably the most dangerous person up there, other than some of the other highly trained operatives that would come to mind. Rena Long, a woman I knew only as Miriam, a woman I knew as Inga, a doctor who was a programmer. But Marjorie Teplitz is really the darkest and easiest one to spot out of them. And she answered the phone and really did a number on me with character assassination. And whatever she said, coupled with whatever else was done, they were able to keep me from getting an apartment. And in a couple of cases, I actually had signed the lease and put the money down, and all of a sudden they backed out and looked at me as if I had 3 heads, and in one case didn't even refund my money. So last time was the worst because I was then, after all these shenanigans and games, down to the wire. The day I had to be out, I went to pick up the keys after having signed a lease and given a deposit, only to have the woman look at me scared to death as if I had 3 heads and refund my deposit and tell me, I'm so sorry, but the old tenants, their job fell through, they're not moving, they've been good to us for 3 years, we can't just throw them out in the street. So it left me with nowhere to go on the day I had to move out. And I can say that the place I had been living prior was a setup, and I was living in a neighborhood filled with people belonging to Freemasonic cults, which is where I'm living now. I then was set up with a real estate agency connected to Freemasonry, and I only had I had that day to find an apartment, and I was offered the apartment I'm living in now. All of the real estate agents in the area selling homes, including Easy Realty, have 666 in the phone number. A large number of the real estate agents, private real estate agents listing homes for sale in the area, have 666 in their cell phone number. And the old woman I am renting the apartment from, which is actually part of a private home, much to my horror, when we exchanged phone numbers after I signed the lease and gave the money, she gave me her phone number, and in the phone number are the digits 666. It is very clear to me, as it will be to any police officer patrolling my neighborhood, that this area is a setup. Victims of human slavery are often put in a building or neighborhood which cultists have band together and create their own neighborhoods and areas. Therefore, so if they do something to a victim, there are no witnesses. In fact, where I had lived before at 811 Walton on the 6th floor, apartment 9F, was a setup from my old attorney, who was discovered by police. Carmen Grion, my old attorney, was discovered through an intense police investigation to be part of the CIA's child trafficking cartel. She was a setup. She set me up in the building, and police have even told me it was a setup. The building superintendent is a Freemason, an illegal alien who doesn't speak English, who somehow got into the union through his connections to Freemasonry. And none of his IDs or driver's license, registration to his car, nothing matches. And they told me that, in fact, they believe everyone on the 6th floor was involved in what was happening to me, and I was set up there on purpose so that there would be no witnesses if anything happened. And when something did happen, my door was kicked in by a U.S. Marshal, Danny Weinstein, in order that people could come in and steal my Supreme Court documents, records, medical photos, medical records. Nobody saw anything. So currently I am living in a flat. I was set up here. The homeowner has 666 in her cell phone. And because of my financial situation, I needed to get 2 roommates to afford the apartment. And both of my roommates are clearly set up. Both women told me they were in healthcare. I'm a therapist, so we would feel we had something in common. I was told by the first candidate that she was a full-time nurse. She showed me her paycheck. She was making excellent money. I called the supervisor at the private hospital. I called the supervisor to verify the employment. She got rave reviews. I tried to verify as much as I could about her, and she also claimed to be a student. Well, she's suddenly now home 24/7. She says she's only getting 1 case a week, so she literally went to work once for about 2 hours this week. And this happened suddenly when I lost my job at Lenox Hills Physical Therapy in the city, which is nothing more than a front for cultists involved in human trafficking. All of a sudden, both of my roommates are suddenly not working. The other roommate, Barry, he tried to use an African accent and claimed to be from Cameroon. She claims to be a full-time home health aide while studying medicine to be a physician's assistant. When I lost my job, I noticed that she was not going to school, nor is she working. For the last 2 months, she has been home like 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Nothing about her checks out. She fails to keep up the African accent, and so she's now speaking with a Southern American accent. Nothing about her checks out. She tried to con me out of $200 her first week here, and she's causing a great deal of trouble. She was clearly a setup. In order to explain how she cannot work and live, she told me that she's receiving government money. Well, the government doesn't give money to foreigners unless, of course, they're working for them as spies. But nothing about this woman is checking out. I mean, she's an American. It would take forever to go into, but everything about her is American. Nothing about her is African. When I tried to ask her questions about Cameroon, she spouted off facts that she had clearly just memorized. She's not very good at what she does. She's young, and I think they thought that because she was young and rough around the edges and not a real professional yet, they could slip her by me. But she's very bad at what she does.
Yeah, you were saying the professionals are easy to spot. I know they are. So
there's something about them, like Carmen Leon. I mean, there's just like the police have interrogated her, and they say there's just something really evil about this woman. Conning your slave out of money. Anything you con out of a victim of human slavery, anything you steal from them is considered a tip, and you get to keep it as their slave handler. So conning somebody out of something, asking to borrow something and not returning it are all very typical of people like Carmen Brion, people involved in human slave handling. I have to say she's definitely fitting the formula. So I also had something very bizarre happen, and that 2 days ago.
Wait a minute, before you explain that, why don't you explain a little bit about the triggers they have put in you and what they're designed to do, and then explain about what you told me about what you're about to get into, so people will understand a little bit better.
Okay. Victims of human slavery, like myself, the brainwashing starts at birth or in the womb. In order to enslave a child for life, heavy mind control through brainwashing, torture, gang rape, sick, unbelievable gang rape, all videotaped to further the sexual humiliation, mind control, drugging, sleep deprivation, starvation, severe emotional trauma and shock are implemented in a formula, satanic ritual abuse on the child from birth or even in the womb by torturing an abducted, raped, pregnant girl to begin the torture of the fetus. So in a lot of cases involving the U.S. military CIA, the torture of the child began in the womb with the torture of a raped, pregnant, typically teenage girl who's been abducted into these programs. So there's a child trafficking / breeding program in the U.S. military CIA. The police are now very aware of this and very concerned. They conducted an intense and expensive 2-year investigation, and they were themselves shocked to have the investigator come back and tell them we have a serious problem. The U.S. military is heavily involved in child trafficking, and went into detail that this child trafficking involves undocumented breeding or breeding of undocumented babies.
And with the triggers, like
the brainwashing begins in some cases in the womb or at birth. It needs to begin before the age of 5. It like I said, it's torture, gang rape, horrific sexual humiliation, sleep deprivation. This is combined, intertwined with a trigger, a code, to control the brain like a computer, so that it enables them to not only fear and Stockholm syndrome and shock, to fear escape, but they're also their mind is controlled as a computer. You also have to realize that where the CIA is involved, there are plenty of dirty cops. There are good cops too, but good cops know that dirty cops are no secret. And the good cops that want to fight this have to work carefully, because sometimes the biggest people in the police department are controlled by CIA child trafficking cartels. In the Franklin cover-up, the Omaha police chief was named as not only being part of it, but 97 children fingered him as a pedophile. And they were scared and threatened into backing down and recanting their testimony. So the victims can't even really go to the police if they're a victim of U.S. military trafficking, because the police will be ordered to not give them a report, and they will be routed through dirty social workers, with people like Fiona and Mason at Safe Horizon, Shauna Lind at Sanctuary for Families, Cheryl Smolinski at Expat, the people at GEMS. These social workers will lie, alter reports, lose reports, and traffic any young girl or child of interest to the military right back into traffickers' hands. So there's really nowhere to run. The only children that are getting, or young girls that are getting help, are the ones that the military have no interest in. And they're used as a front to show good work. But even they are used for mind control experiments, behavior modification experiments, experimenting with new drugs or surgeries, and the babies they have through sex slavery are very much experimented on. So, when you're a victim of U.S. military mind control, it's a very complex issue. It involves brainwashing, codes, triggers, and they have such an intricate network of dirty people posing as professionals that there's no out. It's like a matrix. So the triggers enable them to control a person through emotional shock, trauma, and fear, combined with codes, phrases that enable them to control the mind like a computer.
Okay. So, and now get back into what you were telling me that had happened with your stomach and your bedroom and the lock on your door, and how you had woken up kind of, and you noticed that something had been moved with your door and somebody had been into into your room a few nights ago, and just explain all of that to me, because I wanted the listeners to really understand, like how these handlers will know your trigger word, and they will come in your room or whatever and say it, and you won't wake up. You won't be able to move. You won't be able to do anything, just as long as they have you under that trigger control. Okay?
That's correct.
Mm-hmm.
Well, my door has a lock, and I lock it every night. I lock it anytime I'm not here. I've been into my room a few times, and somebody has clearly been through my things. But now my door is sticking in such a way that I can look at it and see that someone's been picking the lock. They don't have a key. They're picking the lock, and they're damaging it. So now it's hard to even just turn the lock. A couple of days ago, I think I told you, my stomach was hurting, and I was pressing on it, and it was like sharp pain. And I went into the bathroom, and I took a Q-tip and ran it around my belly button, and I pulled out what I thought was a big black scab. I threw it in the toilet, but I took a second look at it, and because I noticed, hey, wait a minute, that's got a little bit of white at the tip. And as the dried crust of blood kind of was, dissolving a bit, I could see that. I pulled it out. I took another look at it, and I was like, this isn't just a black scab. This is a piece of surgical gauze that had been drenched in dried blood. And I ran a Q-tip around my belly button, and it started bleeding. And I was pulling out, pieces of dried blood, and I could tell it really hurt. Clearly, something was done, like some type of injection, and they didn't want to leave marks anywhere on my body, so it was deep in my belly button. And then they put a piece of surgical gauze in there, which I couldn't even see. And had I not put a Q-tip in my belly button's deep, I never would have found it.
Yeah, they probably planned for it to just wash out in the bath or something, and you not notice it.
I hadn't. By the way, this is something I had found in the past when I was living with a person, Carol Jean Ceci Nichols and Wiley Duke Nichols. They're two violent insane pedophiles who were posing as my biological parents with a forged fake birth certificate. They were given possession of me at age 4 by David Rockefeller when we lived in Virginia. I was born in Kenya and was given to him by David Rockefeller when we lived in Virginia. We lived next door to David Rockefeller's personal assistant, Michelle Singer, at 10 Linda Drive. Michelle Singer's husband was an Army Intel CIA op involved in human trafficking. When I lived with these people, I found the same bizarre thing many times. So it's a procedure they do, which involves some kind of injection into the belly button where it's not visible. But it's a deep injection, and it's like really painful.
Okay. Tell me...
And I can say also when I lived at 274 Broadway, which was a setup, the building was owned by Lee Sider. He's involved with the Jewish Mafia, involved with child and human trafficking, pornography, etc. He's partners with one of my old slave handlers, Steve Gorog. The Jewish Mafia, which has nothing to do with Judaism, period, they're occultists with Jewish last names, use the comic book industry as a cover. So if you buy an old comic book for $500,000, you've bought a high-end sex slave. If you rent one for $1.2 million or $2 million, you've rented a mind-controlled establishment. And that's the cover. Lee Sider owned the building where I lived. Everybody in the building was involved in trafficking. So there would never be any witnesses. It's an illegal building. There were only, I think, four other occupants in the building. 4 other apartments in the building. While I was living there, I had barricaded the door with a number of things. when I woke up, the barricades had been moved, and I noticed that my leg itched. And I itched, I scratched the leg, and I noticed there was like a cut at the top of my leg. And I scratched it, and there was like a bizarre, I thought, stab, and then I realized that they were 2 or 3 dissolvable stitches. Tracers are put in female operatives' bodies, typically focused in the breast and inside the reproductive area. But they're also placed under the right rib and at the top of the right leg, which is where the dissolvable stitch was. So they were either putting in a new tracer, because tracers are delicate and knock out and wear out easy and fast, or they were trying to remove one, given the fact that I was going to police and religious leaders and seeking help. So that, I mean, it absolutely has something to do with a tracer, and that is this is documented in books written by doctors and people in the military that have come to find out about child trafficking and human slavery in the military and have gotten out and written books.
So tell me a little bit more about your handlers. And tell me like exactly what handlers are, and then tell me more about your personal handlers and what they've done and all the stuff that you've gone through.
Handlers are really the lowest of the low. It takes a special kind of evil to be a handler. They're darker and they're colder than the most cold-blooded murderer, because being a handler involves torture, sexual abuse, mental abuse. It involves tormenting the victim to death. In many cases, I have to say, in the military, thousands of children die during programming in order to get one child strong enough to survive it, who lives to become a viable, mind-controlled operative. That's how brutal the programming is. Handlers are experts on programming and mind control. They are adept in the Freemasons. It takes years of training and study, and they literally study the formula to satanic ritual abuse, slave handling. There are several good books on this. One is The Illuminati Formula to Create Mind-Controlled Slaves by Fritz Springmeier. The other is Satanic Ritual Abuse by Kathleen Sullivan. And there are books written by former slaves, such as Kathy O'Brien's Trans-America, or Thanks for the Memories by Sue Ford. And it really explains handlers, their role, and satanic ritual abuse, mind control. So to be a handler is to be the worst kind of pedophile and murderer you can imagine. And they have codes for their victims. So they control their mind like a computer through codes and catchphrases, and their job is to keep up a steady stream of problems, attacks, systematic mental abuse, and typically sexual torture. Carmen Guillon, who was discovered by police to be involved with the CIA's child trafficking cartel, was my attorney. She was a complete setup. I met her through Social Peace Animal Rescue, which began on East 4th. It was a setup because I had lived on East 4th as a teenager, and I always, when I return to a city, I always go back to the first place I remember. So Social Peace was on East 4th Street, a couple of apartments down from where I first came to New York and lived as a teenager. It was a complete setup, and that's also a very long and involved story, but I'll just say I met her there. It was clearly a setup, and she became my handler, much like FBI Chief Ted Gunderson and Senator John DeCamp were double agents used to destroy big cases on child trafficking and mind control in the Franklin cover-up, Omaha, Nebraska. Carmen Guillon was put on me as my handler for containment, attacks, abuse, to sabotage all of my efforts and to sabotage my case, which she did very well. She destroyed my case and lost all the crucial evidence. She admitted this in Supreme Court, and while honest police detectives were sitting in the audience already conducting an official police investigation, they still altered my Supreme Court documents and cut out her admissions to losing the evidence. Carmen Guillon was a handler. Esther Franco Julian was put into my life as a handler in a setup. She and her father, Enrique Ochoa, also lost crucial documents and evidence in my case, and they were under a police investigation when Enrique Ochoa sent hitmen after me. And a lot of their dirt was discovered, and as a matter of fact, they remain under surveillance to such an extent that Esther actually had to get a part-time job for the first time in her life at 26 years old. She has a long record of drug abuse, prostitution, rehab, arrests for drug abuse and alcohol, driving under the influence of drugs and alcohol, arrests for public nudity, and so on and so forth. Esther Franco was put on me for the same reason Carmen was. I had phased Carmen out of my life, and she was being watched day and night by the police. They put Esther on me to take over, living in my apartment rent-free to sabotage me, steal anything of any value, drain me of money and resources, and use her to drug my food, and sabotage all my efforts, and just keep up a steady stream of sabotage and efforts to just make my life hell and drive me crazy and sabotage any efforts or how do you say, advances I might make in getting any real help, getting asylum. And my first handlers were, of course, the two people in Naval Intel CIA who had gone into the military to avoid prison, and that was Wiley Duke Nichols and his ex-wife Cheryl Jean Starkey Nichols. And those were my first handlers and programmers. George Bush Sr., as head of the CIA, took child trafficking to a whole new, terrifying level, took mind control and mind control experiments to horrific lows and highs, and George Bush Sr. personally oversaw my programming, as did Henry Kissinger. So these are some of my handlers, and these are the roles of handlers.
Wow.
I would also like to add that at this point, many foreign governments have, first of all, they protested my treatment in the Supreme Court to the Supreme Court. I would like to say Judge Sherman and his assistant, Pat Brody, were clearly on child traffickers' payroll. They were unprofessional. In front of a witness, Dr. John Romanowski, who's a former advocate, Pat Brody was so combative and so abusive and so unprofessional that Dr. Romanowski, said to me, "This woman is just a pig. She's so unprofessional. She was clearly trying to provoke you, and she's clearly on someone's payroll." And she apologized to me for not saying more to Pat Brody about her behavior, which was unprofessional to the point of just, she was a pig. Judge Sherman also likewise had a very arrogant attitude, like, well, yeah, what are you going to do about it? And I should say that Judge Sherman, in the Supreme Court, caught himself up in lies. When he was talking to Dr. John Romanowski, he said he didn't remember Carmen Guillon's admission to losing evidence, and I said, this is an explosive case. being watched by people all over the world. If you're going to tell me that you can't remember her admitting to you in Supreme Court and your response to it with a courtroom full of witnesses and other attorneys, her saying that she lost the evidence, no one's going to believe that. He then said, oh, no, I thought she said she found the evidence. That's what I remember. So he lied and caught himself up in the lie. He also had said he didn't remember signing a court order holding Carmen Guillon in contempt of court. And yet I made 15 copies. They were all stolen. I found one. When I found the copy of it, then all of a sudden Judge Sherman remembered signing a court order holding her in contempt of court for holding all of my documents and losing crucial evidence. Judge Stanley Green did everything he could to help me, I believe. He seems to be a really decent man, and I think he showed concern and compassion, and I think he cared about me and my case and what I stood for. However, this is much bigger than one man, and Judge Stanley Green held Carmen Guillon in contempt of court. Many foreign governments were watching this. They protested to the Supreme Court. They protested my treatment to the 44th Precinct. I should say that immediately following Carmen Guillon's admission to losing crucial evidence, a Freemasonic police detective, Detective Valentini of the 44th Precinct Bronx, showed up in the Supreme Court with his partner. They both acted like complete pigs and arrested me. They lied to me and told me they just wanted to question me because Carmen Guillon had claimed I tried to kill her. This was a clear manipulation in order to create a new set of problems for me to keep me from following up on a lawsuit against Carmen Guillon. The whole thing took a year, and it was a very effective way to shut down legal action against Carmen Guillon. I should say now that Detective Valentini, the whole thing was dropped, but Detective Valentini is under investigation by Internal Affairs. The honest police officers in the 44th Precinct who looked at, Detective Valentini tried to keep it a secret. So when it got out at the 44th Precinct that he had arrested me, many police officers were immediately upset. They looked into it. There was zero evidence of any kind. One of them punched Valentini. Another cop from another precinct came and started to beat him up, and other cops had to hold him off Valentini. He spit in his face and said, that attorney, Carmen Guillon, is dirty as hell. Who is paying you? And then he also said to him, I have children too, you son of a bitch. And he started to go at him, and other honest cops had to hold him off Valentini. For this reason, foreign governments called and threatened the 44th Precinct with action. Many foreign governments have petitioned the United Nations for my safety, fair treatment, and immediate release. Because I'm under attack, I can't get a legal job, so that puts me in very difficult situations, working for slave labor, working for people who hire illegals, which is typically very abusive, putting me in situations where I'm working for slave handlers, such as at Linux Hills Physical Therapy. The whole thing was just a front, and I was working for cash off the books to keep me in, coming in for abuse and programming and containment. Wow.
Okay. It's just really incredible and actually quite heartbreaking. So I want the listeners to understand why they're going through so much trouble to control you, to keep you out of...
Can I add one more thing that was really important?
Yep.
Directly following what happened in the Supreme Court, and Carmen Guillon was held in contempt of court by both Judge Sherman and Judge Stanley Green. I was, of course, taking legal action against her. And then there was the debacle with Detective Valentini, who, is under investigation, and his career is over. And then my door was kicked in, and I was thrown up against the wall by U.S. Marshal Danny Wynham, badge number 3 of the Bronx. He kicked my door in and illegally threw me out of my apartment. I went to housing in Bronx and got an order by Judge Jose Rodriguez to get back in because there were no legal documents allowing U.S. Marshal Danny Wynham to do this. It was an illegal eviction. When I got back in, there were police officers accompanying me from the 44th precinct. When we got into my apartment, it had been ransacked. It was just decimated. My Supreme Court documents were strewn all over the place, on the floor. The medical evidence, medical photos, medical records were missing. The Supreme Court documents and records were missing. My Supreme Court documents were then further altered. And there is now a pending case against the city of New York because of Detective Valentini and U.S. Marshal Danny Wynham. I should also say that when I went to the 44th precinct, I was abused by Supervisor Bailey, who screamed at me, verbally abused me, and tried to scare me out of demanding a police report, which she refused to give me, even though I went back to the 44th precinct on numerous times. There were videotapes in the hallway that would show me being abused and thrown out of my apartment by U.S. Marshal Danny Wynham, who had paid another marshal to be with him. We still don't have that marshal's name. But police have said, clearly both men knew they were being paid to participate in the crime. So in this way, Supervisor Bailey aided child traffickers by denying me a police report and by denying me copies of the videotape that would show my abuse. So now I have a lawsuit against the city of New York, and my attorney, Robert Wolf, only handles multi-million-dollar cases. He was a very well-known human rights attorney who is now somewhat in retirement with that. But when he read about my case and researched me and vetted my history as a victim of child trafficking and human slavery, found out about all the foreign governments that are petitioning for my immediate release with the United Nations, he took my case for free. So there is an active case pending against the city of New York for these abuses and violations of human rights.
Wow. Okay. Well, that's an incredibly heartbreaking story, and I commend you for your strength. I want people to understand why the Central Intelligence, the Freemasons, and the Satanic Order is trying to destabilize you and keep you from talking. I would like you to get into a little bit about your training. And I know you told me that even you have been shot in the head when they did try to kill you, and how you're still able to be alive right now and to be able to give this interview so people can be aware of what's going on in your life and be aware of how sadistic and evil these people really are. But tell me a little bit about your training and how you're able to get through all of this and some of the experiences that you've had to be put in order to save your life.
Okay, well, I was sold to the U.S. military just 1 moment. At the age of 4. That's when my training began in Chinese martial arts. Use of swords, weapons, guns. My specialty are swords and knives, although I'm an expert. I'm a crack shot. My specialty are swords and knives and bow and arrow. I went out as a child assassin and soldier for the first time at age 6. It was some type of jungle expedition. I believe it was in Vietnam, which, despite what the public believes, didn't end until 1984. So Vietnam and Thailand were sort of an international hub of 5 and there's a great deal of U.S. military presence there still. I believe it was in Vietnam. I was first used. That was my, well, let me say that's my first memory of being used as a child assassin. None of the other children that I was with, who were all boys, I'm female, survived, and I actually witnessed my best friend, being killed by the U.S. military. We had messed up an assassination. Someone that we both cared about, who had been kind to us, and when we failed to assassinate him, they decided to make an example of the little boy who was most valuable to me, and shot him right in front of me as an example to me what would happen if I defied orders and messed up any other assassination attempt. I was earmarked for greatness, and with my first work in Vietnam as a 6-year-old child assassin, and I have memory around, like, I would say 5 and 6 of being in China, training with a Chinese master. So I learned martial arts and Chinese medicine from this master, who was later discovered to actually be working against the military and trying to help children, and was murdered for it. So I'm highly trained. I was the CIA's top female assassin. There's a great deal of money to be made with mind-controlled assassins. We convinced for a couple of $1 million for a job. And there is literally mega billions of dollars to be made in child trafficking, which the U.S. military, CIA, are the #1 child traffickers in the world, operating through their fronts. And there are billions of dollars being made in child sex slavery, child pornography, child slavery in mines. I would say child labor is probably #1, and child sex slavery is the second most prevalent form of child slavery, and of course child assassins and soldiers coming in at #3. But there are multi-billions of dollars to be made in this industry. It's easy money. The abducted children are then bred as they get older to create more undocumented child slaves. I'm exposing this. It's being taken very seriously. As I said, many foreign governments have petitioned the United Nations for my safety, fair treatment, and immediate release. Countries such as Israel and Ireland that I know of. This information was shared with me by honest police officers. So the entire world is watching my case and abuse with the American military unfolding. This is a very big issue now. The U.S. military has become synonymous with child trafficking. I know too much, and they want to shut me down. They don't want what I know leaving the country. They are doing things to prevent me from regaining my full memory, and they know that if I'm out of America and not constantly being drugged and abused and contained, I'll remember everything and be able to share it, and what I know is enough to bring them completely down. They can't. They have tried to kill me numerous times. I mean, they're trying in more subtle ways because the world is watching.
Wow, that is absolutely heartbreaking.
The last time they tried to kill me was right after U.S. Marshal Danny Wynham kicked my door in, abused me, and threw me out of my apartment illegally. I was abducted and taken by a Ken Spiegelman, Army Intel CIA, to his house in the middle of nowhere at 71 Forest Range Road in Katonah, New York. It's in a national forest. I was abused, and he attempted to kill me. He was using military mind control techniques on me. Um, and he tried several times to run me over with his car. And he even swerved to hit me as I jumped out of the way. So, they're trying to kill me but make it look like an accident.
Yeah.
At this point, prior to, this becoming world, the whole world is watching now, but prior to that, they tried in less subtle ways, such as shooting me in the head and bludgeoning and torturing me beyond recognition.
Wow. So I know you said this all started when you were 4 years old. Is there anything you would like to elaborate on when this all started, what took place, anything that you can remember, anything important that you want to speak about before I get to the next question?
Well, I was born in Kenya, I believe. My earliest memory is of being like 2 and 2.5, 3 years old in Kenya. I spent a great deal of time over my life with the Maasai. There's really no mistaking Kenya, the Serengeti, and the Maasai tribes who are so unique. So I feel certain it was Kenya. My father, my biological father, is Prince Karim Aga Khan. He's the head of the Ismaili Muslims. They are not real Muslims. They are not accepted as real Muslims by real Muslims. The Ismailis are a very dangerous occult. They practice the occult. They're a sex cult. They are all of them are all Ismailis are born, and their name and a number are on a roll. They're all given a roll number, which is what the military does. All victims of mind-controlled slavery, which includes, by the way, military men who have been subjected to severe mind control, are kept on a roll with a roll number. Abducted children don't have legal names, they have a number, because the names that were given change with the assignment. All Ismailis have a roll number. They're all heavily mind-controlled. My father will bless members of the cult by having sex with them, and he will bless girls as young as age 9 by having sex with them. It's clearly, a cult. They're very much involved in human slavery and child trafficking, and the use of child soldiers and assassins and child operatives. The code that the Ismailis use for running child operatives is the children's soccer team. And different people will manage the portfolio for the children's soccer team around the world. In California, the manager of the children's soccer team portfolio was an Irish woman who converted to Ismailism and married a Pakistani man who was involved with the California Congress. They lived in Orange County.
Do you remember his name?
I can't, no.
Okay.
I cannot remember his name, but I have seen pictures of him getting off of a plane in videos about interviews with the Aga Khan in different places in Dubai.
Mm-hmm.
I recognized him. I saw his face.
But if someone showed you a picture, you'd be able to recognize it?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. He's absolutely. If you start looking at videos of the Aga Khan in Dubai, you'll see this man getting off a plane and shaking hands with officials and my biological father. The Prince Karim Aga Khan, my biological father, made a deal with me, selling me to the U.S. military through David Rockefeller at the age of 4. The deal not just included money, it gave him access to all of the sensitive intel I would be working on around the world throughout my life, which gave him a huge advantage in terms of power in the world stage. Gave him a great deal of it gave him a vantage point and a real advantage over his competition politically, in business, in everything, in every way. This is the same deal that Osama bin Laden's parents made with the CIA. Osama bin Laden was sold to the U.S. military at the age of 12. The public front story was that he came to America to go to boarding school. But this is at the age he was sold. So he's heavily mind-controlled. He was an operative in the CIA from the age of 12, and it gave the bin Laden family access to all of the intel that he worked on.
Wow. Wow.
I knew Osama bin Laden. He was very much against his family's occultism, as I am against my family's occultism. And I can just say that he's a beautiful, sweet, loving soul. He is not a violent man. His use as a mind-controlled slave in the CIA was his punishment for fighting occultism.
Yeah.
He's portrayed as a villain when in fact he was punished with slavery for fighting occultism.
Yeah, I do know that Osama bin Laden's wife's father was a big contributor to Brusto Energies, actually the biggest contributor, and that was Bush's first energy company here in Texas. And that is the Osama bin Laden Bush connection way before 9/11.
Well, I don't even think very many Americans believe Osama bin Laden pulled off 9/11 anymore. I can see that around the time that happened, his physical and mental condition was such that he couldn't organize a trip to the kitchen on his own.
Well, he was in a hospital. He was in a hospital in Florida 2 weeks after 9/11 under Tim Osman. That's what I believe his CIA cover name was. And the FBI agent that knew about Osama bin Laden and the whole thing that had been going on that was going to expose it, he got kicked out of the FBI and he got a job as head of security for the Twin Towers, and his first day was 9/11, and he died in the Twin Towers.
All I can say about that is the same people holding me, Barry Gordon, Frank Harris, and Naval Intel CIA, were holding Osama bin Laden in Los Angeles. So I saw him after 9/11. He was in serious condition. He was near death. He did not even know who he was and believed that he had been in a severe car accident. He believed his name to be something else. I just can't remember what it was. Some of my slave handlers, such as Angelo Soteriano, who worked for Warren Beatty, making movies such as Bulworth and Mothman Prophecy. Angelo Soteriano is a high-level Freemason, and ironically, everyone connected to some of my handlers and people involved in my handling, such as Barry Zellner, another high-level Freemason, Angelo Soteriano, had friends in the Twin Towers, and none of them were at work that day, or they had just gotten new jobs within weeks or a couple of months prior to 9/11.
Yeah.
And that's a pattern.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it is. And we can get into 9/11 all day, considering that 9/11 is a few days away. But let's keep this about you. So tell me about your biggest problems that you've had from the CIA.
Well, like I said, I'm currently held as a political prisoner of America. I cannot work legally, which puts me in a very bad situation. Working cash off the books is slave labor. Working difficult, demanding, draining jobs for slave wages. Being just exhausted and financially drained. With everything they've done to me, I have serious physical conditions and need medical care that I can't get. I face constant harassment and setup. my home situation, as we described earlier, is clearly unsafe. And I've spent my life, prior to escaping 6.5 years ago, living under armed guard, heavily drugged, in between assignments, and as a human slave. You know, my slavery was heartbreaking, because aside from being used as an operative and assassin, you know, some of my work as a slave could also be being sold to men that they wanted to spy on or set up for something, which would include being raped under mind control, which is a mind-shattering, soul-shattering experience. You know, to be in a situation where you are forced to accept rape from the man you've been sold to and live with is just a torture. Yeah. It's hell. It's sickening. My whole life has been hell. I've survived because I kept telling myself, I have to bring this down. I have to expose this. Millions of little children are dying. They kill thousands to get one like me that works in the U.S. military. Millions and millions of little girls are turned into sex slaves and raped and bred. Every one of them goes insane. The abuse is so horrific. They're driven insane through constant rape and breeding, being forced to carry a rapist rape baby, and it drives them insane, and it's a hell. And I forced myself to survive because I had to live to get the story out. During my slavery, I was at one point becoming too difficult to handle, and I had been working on exposing these networks with a very dear friend of mine who was like a sister to me. And in was it October 1997, I believe, that could be checked. I was subjected to severe torture by Dr. Neil Handel, who was Army Intel CIA. It was a setup at the surgical center on West Olympus. My first attorney on that was a Mark Hurwitz, and it was later handed over to a Dr. Mark Rather, who, by the way, disappeared off the face of the earth when we started legal action. On the day in question, I went in for a minor procedure. It was a front. It was all under heavy mind control. Of course, it makes no sense because I was about to go up on stage with a production of John Shanley's The Women of Manhattan at the Wooden O Theater. So going in for minor surgery just made no sense at that point. We were about to go on stage. On the day, there were 4 or 5 other surgeons with Dr. Neil Handel. They all canceled their surgeries, and Neil Handel was the only doctor there that day. It was a busy surgical center that did no less than 17 surgeries a day. On the day, all surgeries had been canceled except for myself. Dr. Neil Handel's typical staff were all off that day. The other doctors and nurses present all had fake names, fake social security numbers, and none of them could be found. The only doctor there who was real besides Dr. Neil Handel was a Dr. Perot, who, when I filed lawsuit through Mark Hurwitz, disappeared off the face of the earth with his wife and 3 children. They did a search. He was nowhere in America. They searched Canada, then they searched Europe, then they searched Asia and the Middle East. Dr. Perot's disappearance as a surgeon is so difficult that everyone involved, including police, have said the only explanation is witness protection, which, by the way, is a farce. Every drop of my blood was changed And they said that during the process of trying to change my blood, I leaked, so they had to cut my lower abdomen open to clean me out. That was the explanation. Now, keep in mind, the front was minor spot-reducing liposuction on the leg. So none of this makes any sense, especially the fact that why would I do something like this when I was about to literally go on stage with my production? So every bit of my blood was changed. The explanation for that was given to me was that your blood is a map. It tells the story of your life.
Yeah.
Every country you've lived in, through the air you breathe, the water you drink, the food you eat, any bizarre diseases that country may have would reflect in your blood. So if you wanted to erase someone's identity, you would have to change their blood.
It's true.
There are also other explanations I don't want to get into at this time.
And also, there's also chelation. That's what chelation is, and they also use chelation as a form of healing to take the toxins and poisons out of your body to clean your blood.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes, correct. My heart stopped. In reality, what happened was a team of CIA, U.S. military intel, handlers and programmers came in and tortured me for 12 hours. And then I remember them cutting my lower abdomen open. I remember something warm dropping away from my body, and I fell to the ground, passed out, hit my head. When I woke up, I had a huge lump on my head and a severe concussion. They took me to an aftercare facility, which was a private home in Marina del Rey. When this was investigated by private investigators through Mark Hurwitz and Dr. Mark Ravis, both attorneys, it didn't exist. The aftercare facility did not exist. Later, when I tried to get my records from Dr. Mark Ravis, because I was going to take legal action, Dr. Mark Ravis had grown up in Sacramento, California, and Beverly Hills, closed his thriving multi-million-dollar law firm that he owned down and disappeared off the face of the earth. Mark Hurwitz was paid off for silence, and he retired with big U.S. government military contracts. He tried to hold my records, and his secretary, who was a hero, I believe her name is Teresa, went down into the basement and found my records. He said he lost them and no longer had them. She confronted him and sent me my records, which had been greatly altered and cleaned up.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, wow, this is just absolutely incredible. And
can I add one thing?
Yeah.
Most of the people around me have 666 in a cell phone or their address or something. Dr. Mark Ravis had 666 in his cell phone number. Mark Hurwitz, the attorney, had 666 in his address on Chapman Avenue in Orange County, California. And this can be looked up and verified. So there's a clear formula of my abusers and those involved in child trafficking having 666 in an address or phone number.
Okay. And I've been waiting to ask you this question because the other night we really got in depth into about who we know and actually who I grew up with here in Texas and how they went to California. And I'm not going to get into my stories about Hollywood and just Hollywood in general, and I know you've lived there a few times, so just tell me about Hollywood and what you know and what you've been through, what you've seen, the stories that you've gone through. Just tell me about Hollywood. People need to know.
Hollywood is run by the Mafia, U.S. military, intel, CIA. It's really run by the CIA. The Mafia are used as fronts for, out and out trafficking, pornography, hits. They use the Mafia as a front. A lot of people know that the Mafia, or a lot of people believe it is the Mafia that controls Hollywood, when the Mafia are just puppets of the CIA. Some of the biggest stars in Hollywood are mind control victims, slaves like Beyonce. Halle Berry was run by Barry Gordon and Frank Harris. What they did to her was just incredible. Or they are willing operatives and cultists, such as Rihanna, who was run by Barry Gordon and Frank Harris, but she is a willing cultist. She practices the occult. So Hollywood is a front for child trafficking, pornography, assassination. Hollywood stars have an allure so they can get in and out of places. They get invitations all over the world. It sounds crazy to somebody if you say, well, people like Beyonce are operatives. That sounds insane. But of course, you know, foreign militaries are aware of the fact that many Hollywood stars and rock stars are operatives and people push eye on them.
Yeah, it's very old, and especially when you look back at the guy that did the Gong Show. I think that was the first one that was exposed.
He actually came out and said that he was a CIA operative and wrote a book about it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Chuck Berry.
Yep.
Well, Beyonce is a slave, and in her childhood, she lived with the other girls of Destiny's Child with a man called Mike Scott, who's he's at the top of the CIA involved in child trafficking and slavery. The girls lived in his house when in California, and he is a pedophile.
Wait, so was it the first 4 girls of Destiny's Child, or was it the 2 new ones, of the first ones?
Yeah.
Okay.
And even later, because these girls continued to live in his house all the way up until they broke up. So of course you realize the girls that young in a group to be living with an old pedophile, the parents are involved. When Beyonce was supposedly engaged to Jay-Z, who's a high-level Freemason and a homosexual, they were living in Beverly Park, 2 houses over from Mike Scott, who lived in a palace in this gated community in Beverly Park. And I was invited to a party there. And throughout the house, there were pictures of Beyonce and Destiny's Child as children growing up in Mike Scott's various homes. His previous home had been in Bel Air. I had been there as well. And so there were pictures of these girls staying in his home, different homes, growing up. So Beyonce was 2 houses over. She's supposedly engaged to her homosexual slave handler, Jay-Z, and she's still in, you know, these very provocative sexual pictures with Mike Scott on vacation around the world and at his current home. So it's really sort of like a well-kept secret, because certainly those in on it know about it. Beyonce is heavily mind-controlled. I don't believe that she knows how she's being used. I don't believe she knows that Jay-Z is a part of pimping her out to other men. She doesn't know that the man abusing her sexually lives 2 houses over from her. She doesn't know she's an operative. She does know something's wrong. I mean, she talks about having a split personality, and Sasha Fierce is her stage personality, because she is such a shy, sweet girl. She has to become Sasha to get on stage. You know, I'm speaking out for her because she's not willing. You know, she's being painted as a Satanist and a cultist, and that she sold her soul to Satan for success. No, this girl is sexually abused, tortured. Her quote husband is a homosexual slave handler who rapes and tortures her to keep her under his control. She has no control of her over her life. She does not know how she's being used. She doesn't have any control over her money, which is all stolen from her. And her parents were a part of it. And now Jay-Z benefits from her career, but she really doesn't.
Yeah, her father is a high-ranking Freemason here in Houston. And me personally, I actually opened up for her show in Cluj. Like, I was one of the opening acts. And it was the whole all those people were really strange. Really strange. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, and
her abuse is incredible. I mean, she's so heavily mind controlled and abused that she cannot be blamed for anything. She's not to blame for anything.
Yeah, her parents are high-ranking Freemasons here in Houston, and I know her father sold all of his rights to her publishing company and her to a publishing company in the UK that's associated and run by the Blue Lodge of the UK. So she's pretty much run and owned by the European monarchy.
Correct. And I would say also that Halle Berry has been subjected to mind control.
Mm-hmm.
She's heavily abused. She's a sweet girl. You know, everything in her life, including the father, it's a beautiful, beautiful little girl, was a setup. And as far as I know, Oliver Martinez, the man that's currently in her life, is a setup. I know him, come across him. He's bad news. I believe that he willingly cooperates, you know, for his position in Hollywood. And I believe Halle Berry is another sweet girl who's been greatly victimized.
Wow. Yeah. And you were also telling me this story about J-Lo and what happened with her and Affleck. And so just get into that story a little bit if you feel like it.
Yeah, I hadn't really wanted to get into Jennifer Lopez. She's a sweet, beautiful person, and I really love her a lot. I think she's so sweet and very talented. She was having a lot of trouble with Puff Daddy, who's bisexual, involved in Masonry, and Ben Affleck. And Ben Affleck dumped her days before the wedding, with her family already flying in for the wedding, you know, for optimum pain and humiliation. She was fighting his abuse. Ben Affleck is mind control slave handler. Ben Affleck and Puff Daddy, Sean Puffy Combs, work for the CIA.
Well, his label is owned by the government. When he sold Bad Boy, the government bought it, and he sits as the head CEO of it. So that's why Bad Boy is still around, because Bad Boy went into the shitter because it got out that what Puff Daddy was and what he was doing, and the hip-hop community stopped supporting him, and then the government came in and bought Bad Boy and put him as the head CEO. And that's when he released.
Sean Puffy Combs and Jay-Z were being used to heavily recruit. But when it started coming out, and when it started to get out that Jay-Z was a homosexual and Beyonce's slave handler, you know, you're right. They're meeting with a lot of opposition now, and where they used to have, you know, young brothers all excited about Masonry, you know, now they're looking at these guys like, what the hell are you involved in, and just keep Masonry away from me.
Yeah.
So Jennifer Lopez had enough trouble with them that you're right, she went on a talk show and she started talking about possibly exposing some secrets that would change the music world, and, you know, hinting things about Ben Affleck. And people like Ben Affleck and billionaire Dan Weinstein, who was a former judge and mediator. Dan Weinstein runs 7 Teepees, which is a orphanage and foster care facility, halfway house for typically minority children. It is also used, of course, for, you know, child trafficking and experimentation on these kids. He's a bad guy. Dan Weinstein was actually put on me as a handler for a while. Dan Weinstein and everybody around him, Tom Girardi, their whole group of poker buddies, Ben Affleck is their buddy. They all get together at the Havana Club in Beverly Hills on Cannon Drive. And they were all going to gang up. They were all ganging up on J-Lo. And she had serious problems with these people who were planning to just take her down to the ground and destroy her and mutilate her. And I knew Dan Weinstein. I knew Tom Girardi. I knew the group of CIA thugs that hang out at the Havana Club. And I stood up for them. And I basically said, you know, you go after this girl, you deal with me. Ben Affleck went to the Beverly Hills Police Department to seek a restraining order against me and was denied. This was looked into by the police in New York City. And this is when, you know, actually a large number of Puerto Rican, Dominican, and Mexican police banded together to start to keep me safe when they looked into this and realized, hey, you know, what this girl says checks out. Ben Affleck sought a restraining order against her. She was protecting Jennifer Lopez, and all these powerful men in the CIA went after her. And this could be verified. So that's the story of Jennifer Lopez. These men in her life, Sean Puffy Combs and Ben Affleck, were handlers. And Ben Affleck is really a dangerous, sick person. I'm proud of her for standing up for them, and I'm glad. I'm just glad she survived it.
So, is there anything?
She's a sweet, beautiful girl.
Mm-hmm. Is there anything else you would like to add about your Hollywood experiences? Anyone else you'd like to talk about?
My entire Hollywood experience was one CIA drama after another. Mm-hmm. You know, including my work with the Jacksons. I've known Michael Jackson. I knew Michael Jackson my whole life. The people around the Jacksons, Barry Gordon, Frank Harris, Norby Walters, were all CIA, all handlers. Michael Jackson was fighting his abuse, and so was LaToya. So they did character assassinations on them. Michael is not a pedophile. They mutilated them surgically, which is the Dr. Jose Delgado psychosurgery and mutilation program. Surgical mutilation for those who fight the Freemasonic CIA norms, or if they fight their slavery, you start to surgically mutilate them. This is the program of CIA Operative Dr. Jose Delgado. They were mutilating Michael and LaToya while conducting character assassinations on them for fighting their slavery and the fact that all their money was stolen from them. They had no control over it. They had no freedom, no control over their money, their careers, their lives. They were drugged and kept heavily under armed guard, as I was. When Michael fought really hard, they started setting him up as a, quote, pedophile. It's all bullshit. He loved kids. He himself had been raped as a child. There's just no way he would have ever hurt a child. I think, you know, to say it was a modern-day lynching would be very accurate. Mm-hmm. LaToya Jackson was set up with Jack Gordon, who was a CIA op. He was her, quote, husband. Again, this is another, you know, bisexual, Freemasonic CIA slave handler. He beat her, he drugged her, he forced her into prostitution, he forced her to do pornography. She had no choice in any of this. And it was used to assassinate her character, but she was a slave who had no choice. She fought very hard, and I'm going to tell you for a fact, they took her down to a point where she was homeless, couldn't get a job, and I don't want to say what happened to her or what she had to do when she finally realized that she had no choice but to stop fighting.
Yeah.
Michael Jackson started to speak out on the CIA and who was really running Hollywood in public concerts, and 3 weeks later he was murdered. I had gone on record with what was happening to Michael Jackson and the fact that his own father, Joe Jackson, and Frank Harris and Barry Gordon and his other handlers had been trying to destroy him, to take control of Neverland for years. I went on record. I told this to Carol Smolinski of SPAC, and I also told this to the Imam Siraj Wahhaj, of the Masjid Al Taqwa in Brooklyn, New York, a year and a half before he was murdered.
Wow. Well, absolutely incredible. I do know that I did hear stories. Also, there is a large seed deposit of oil under Never Never Land, and Michael Jackson was never reported for his entourage to ever be going to a gas station, which was a signal that he was trying to basically tell the CIA and the New World Order to fuck off, that he had actually tapped the oil reserve underneath Neverland. And if you know about seed oil, you can take it out of the ground and put it into your car. It doesn't need any processing. And there's seed oil deposits all over the United States, but the American government doesn't want people to know this. And so if Michael came out public about that oil and Never Neverland, he would have not only been the best and biggest entertainer, he would have been one of the richest.
Well, he actually was one of the richest.
Mm-hmm.
Michael owned the rights to Beatles music. He owned the rights to Rolling Stones music. I mean, Michael was very smart, and those around him, they used his money to purchase other artists' music rights. And Michael was one of the richest people in show business.
Mm-hmm.
He just had no control over any of it. And like me, when Michael fought for control of his money, they mutilated him, and they conducted character assassinations on him. It is a well-known fact that has been investigated by police detectives that I made millions of dollars in Hollywood as a producer. I facilitated big deals that I was cut out of, and yet I have no money. Through the military, renting an assassin, a mind-controlled assassin, you can rent them for a couple of $1 million for a single job. And yet I have no money. When I fought, I didn't know what I was, but when I fought at one time, when I was in Hollywood as a producer, I didn't know what I was. I didn't know I was a mind-controlled slave. I knew something was wrong with my childhood. I knew I didn't trust my own parents. I knew that they weren't my real parents. I didn't realize the extent of the problem. I didn't understand about child trafficking and mind control in the U.S. military and human slavery in the U.S. military. I didn't realize that I was part of, one big, huge CIA matrix in Hollywood. And I just started fighting the people around me for control of my money, and that's when my serious problems started. But like I said, I was the CIA's top mind-controlled female assassin. I'm not that easy to kill.
Yeah, I know, and you're a strong person. Tell me about your case in New York right now and what's going on with that. And I know you said you're waiting for asylum, and just tell me, tell me about the when you went to go get food the other day, that story about the police. Just tell me about New York and what's going on right now outside of the handlers in your own apartment and in the neighborhood that they've pretty much pushed you into.
Okay. Well, I have a great deal of support among all police at this point, for which I'm very grateful for. I'm being kept from working. I went to an organization, actually a group of Muslims was getting some food, and I went to pick up the food, and 10 police officers were at the station. They're all smiling and helping me carry my cart, and this lady guy came up to me and smiled and asked if he could carry my cart, and he said to me, he smiled at me and he winked. He said, the police are off this for you. And, it was just a very positive, I was surrounded by positive people letting me know we have your back, we're watching you, we know what's going on, we know all about child trafficking in the CIA, and we're here for you. So that was a really positive experience. I'm working with an agency now applying for asylum. I don't know that I should say which agency.
No,
but
I mean, yeah.
I will say that all of the other girls and women in this agency, organization, which is funded by the State Department, receive immediate help. Living, their rent is paid, they're given food, food stamps, Metro cards. I am the only one to receive absolutely nothing. They didn't even give me Metro cards, which was a train ticket for transportation.
Mm-hmm.
I have every reason to be very skeptical and very worried about how the asylum process is going to work.
And, well, the United Nations
agency.
It's
already clearly singled me out for different treatment.
Yeah, well, you know how the United Nations was started and who actually started the UN, but I'm not going to get into that, but at least you are trying, but even the UN, the people that started the UN, the Rothschilds, the Zionists, that, it's the same organization. So, and I know you're aware of that, but it's the reason why I'm bringing it up is because really people don't really understand history, and when they're police and people trying to help you, they think going to the UN for asylum is the best that they can do when, that's the very organization that is actually paying the people to go after you, that started that organization. I would like to clarify that.
The United Nations is completely controlled. It's completely controlled. There's the Third Committee of the United Nations, which was supposedly developed to investigate and police child trafficking in the U.S. military and child trafficking in general. They do absolutely nothing.
Yep.
It's just a farce.
Yeah. So your current case right now, the court case, and all that stuff, what's going on with that right now? And how did it come about?
Well, the current case has to do with the abuse of Freemasonic police officers involved in child trafficking, such as Detective Valentini of the 44th Precinct, the abuse and cover-up by Supervisor Bailey, and U.S. Marshal Danny Wynum.
Wow.
Interestingly, the CIA op who tried to kill me, Tim Spiegelman, seems to know Danny Wynum. So I can only assume that U.S. Marshal Danny Wynum is a Freemason. Certainly, if he doesn't know Tim Spiegelman is a high-level Freemason. If he doesn't know Freemasonry, he knows him through the child trafficking ring.
Yeah.
He knows him through some type of criminal ring because Spiegelman, not expecting me to escape or survive, told me he knew the guy.
Mm-hmm.
I've already explained what happened with those incidents leading up to a case against the city. My attorney is Robert Volk. The city wants to settle out of court, and they're just waiting for a doctor's report, which is being handled by the State Department agency.
Okay.
So that's the final step. When they get a doctor's evaluation of the physical damage done to my body, they have indicated they would like to settle out of court to avoid further bad publicity and embarrassment.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Okay. So now we get to my last question, which will probably be a difficult question to answer, but if you could answer it in a roundabout way, and it's a pretty simple question because this is the reason why we're doing this video. How many times have they tried to kill you?
More times than I can count, more times than I remember. I have broken every bone in my body multiple times. I've been shot in the head. I have permanent brain damage. I have severe injuries. More times than I can count. More times than I can count. Or more times than I'm sure that I even remember. there have been times when I just woke up in a hospital with no clue how I got there in very bad shape.
Yeah, I went to
I should say too. Typically a military hospital. This is also what tracers are for. So if we get injured and wind up in a hospital, they trace us into the military facility right away.
Yeah.
I was badly injured in a stage accident a couple of years ago. Someone put like clear hair gel all over the stairs. I fell down the stairs and I had a broken leg, torn ligaments, and a double sprain. I was taken to Elmhurst Hospital in Queens. They later did not want to release my records. When they finally released them, they had been altered. The social worker there, Rhonda Bryant, I applied for help from her, which police told me I should have gotten. And she just looked at me and said, now, keep in mind that I had done interviews with the Army Intel CIA double agent, now posing as a bishop, Bishop Hosea Bradley, which were on Blog Talk Radio, that wound up on YouTube, although they were erased because they went viral around the world in 3 months. So she had listened to my interviews. I had given her the name and number of my attorney and my current court case. And she just looked at me and smiled and said, I'm sorry, you don't have a legal identity. I can't help you. You know, in this just sarcastic, bitchy voice. I was told by police that human rights groups went after her job. I don't know if they got it or not, but I do know that police have told me a number of people have lost their job over this, and that human rights groups went after her. Because my leg didn't even look like a leg. It was so swollen. I was laid up 7 months because social worker Rhonda Bryant, despite the fact that I had an attorney, and by the way, police also told me that's when they knew without a shadow of a doubt that Carmen Guion was dirty in a setup. One phone call from an attorney would have definitely gotten me all the help I needed. So thanks to Carmen Guion and social worker Ron Bryant at Elmhurst Hospital, I wound up living in a basement and eating rotten food, black rotten bananas. And by the way, for the last month, that's what I've been doing, eating rice and buying huge bags of rotten fruit from a fruit stand for $1. That's how I've survived. What little money I had, I made sure that all of my rescue animals have continued to eat well and be healthy.
Wow. Okay. Well, is there anything else you would like to add before we close off the video until next time we can do this?
I think this is a good place to leave it for now. Thank you very much.
Okay. I would like to add one last thing on my behalf, because I just would like to be honest, because we have been communicating on and off for a little bit now, and I know and you know that all of our conversations are listened to and are recorded from my house due to about my family and my stepbrother and all that stuff. I'm not going to get into it. And on your side. So I know because I asked you, you've never lived in a situation where, you know, you don't have a handler, and it seems to be extremely difficult for you to be in any situation where you're in a situation where someone does seem to have your back and does care. Like I was telling you earlier today, and I'm just going to put this on record because I want people to know, because the people watching us already know. If you ever need anything, if you ever need a place to go, you're always welcome here in Texas. There's an extra bedroom here in the house. I know we discussed about how if that were the case, you're worried about your animals and stuff. We'll do our best to try to figure it out. Me, myself, you know, I'm a targeted individual, and I'm in the same situation as you. because of my background and my family. And, you know, God has a way of bringing people together. And that's the only reason why I believe that both of us are still alive and being able to communicate this knowledge and wisdom to open people's eyes and to educate the public on what's really going on and talk about the things that no one will talk about. So I'm openly offering, you know, a place always with me, you know, because we are stronger in numbers. And from knowing your story, you know, you're always alone. You've been alone since the age of 4, and your story is completely incredible and at the same time very heartbreaking. I would like to commend you on your strength and your willingness to be honest and to come forward, and most of all, for doing this on the behalf of children and all of the children that don't have a voice in this world, and all the ones that have passed away, the ones that you knew and the ones that you don't know. So I'd like to say bless you and thank you, Laurel. Thank you so much for this, and I hope it's on YouTube for as long as possible and spread around. This is not copywritten. People can copy it and put it up as many times as they want.
I would like to say thank you to all the foreign governments who have petitioned the United Nations on my behalf, who are working towards my safety and release. I want to say thank you for human rights groups. I want to say thank you for the attorneys here in New York City who have followed my case and followed up with dirty attorneys like Stephen J. Mandel, Carmen Leon. They followed the incident with Detective Valentini. So I would like to say, I know there's a group of attorneys working on my behalf in New York. Whenever there's an incident, they follow up with the corruption, and I want to say thank you to them. I want to say thank you to all the brave police that follow me, get on the train with me, get off the train with me. Sometimes they're in uniform to make their presence known, and a lot of times they're plainclothes detectives. And I just want to say thank you. I know you guys are there. You're doing a great job, and thank you very much.
So thank you, listeners. Spread the word, and until next time, be blessed and continue to walk in the light.